what are the ways that this could shake out? He's been raided. They've got whatever it is that they got. Maybe it's what they wanted, maybe it's not. The FBI is now looking into this. I'm assuming some of those documents will make their way to the January 6th committee if it does turn out that the documents bear on the insurrection. So what could possibly happen in the next few weeks, in the next month? David, I'm really curious about your opinion. If it turns out that this is just about the documents, then I could see there being a backlash, in the immediate months leading up to the midterms. I would hope that if it isn't just about this, then the timeline to come clean about that, to at least imply what they found, if not outright release or state what they found, would be pretty brief. I feel like people are gonna want answers about this. So what do you think are the most likely scenarios for how this develops?
I think the most likely scenario is that in the next 2 weeks, there is an indictment or some sort of public disclosure about the criminality of Donald Trump not related to the Presidential Records Act. If this is just about Donald Trump and a fight over whether the documents were classified in the National Archives, which by the way, doesn't have necessarily the standing to determine whether something is classified. But if it's just that fight, then you were gonna look at perhaps one of the worst reputations for institutional integrity that the United States has ever seen in terms of the Department of Justice, because at that point, it would have been an overreach. You can't have an ex-president, no matter how much we all may detest this man and think he's the most corrupt person, the most abominable person on earth. You still can't have the Justice Department go in and raid the home of an ex-president over presidential records. That's way beyond the pale. And again, because Merrick Garland has been so cautious and so careful, that's why so many people in Washington, at least, in the Department of Justice world are buzzing. This has to be something much bigger. And we will find out soon, because under Justice Department guidelines, when dealing with public officials, you're not supposed to bring a criminal indictment within, I think it's like 60 days of an election. Some people say 90 days. The fact that they are moving now, to me, suggests they've got something that is imminent.
Yeah, and I think we're at about the 90-day range or so. Although, as we'll get into, some Republicans are already saying you can't investigate him.
Well, 2024, here's the interesting thing, because there's this argument that if you violate the Presidential Records Act, there's a punishment there that suggests you cannot hold office again. You cannot be an official government employee. So there's some people, former Clinton, who have been floating this idea that no, the Presidential Records Act is like what taxes, not paying your taxes were to Al Capone. That's what they're gonna catch Donald Trump. To me, that's small potatoes, and that's too cute. And I don't think the Justice Department would go for it.
Yeah, and I've also read some analysis of that saying that if that were to ever be invoked, it would be challenged, and the Constitution doesn't give the legislature the ability to set by law standards for being president, aside from impeachment. Specifically, that's stated in the Constitution. But we'll see with that. Okay, the one I remember the last point I wanted to make. So you were talking about how everyone's reacting to the fact that this is Merrick Garland, of course, and he seems like a very cautious guy. And there's no way that they did this without Merrick Garland giving the okay to it, correct? We can all agree on that.
Absolutely, no. I mean, they're duty bound under something like this to go to the Attorney General.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can't help but remember 1 week, maybe 2 weeks ago, he gave that interview where he was asked about, there are some who say that it's too politically dangerous to go after the president, and he seemed oddly sure of himself as he was saying, there's no one that we wouldn't investigate. And there he was talking about January 6th. He wasn't talking about national records. This had to have been in the works for at least a little bit. I wonder, is that what he was referencing? Was that him telegraphing that something is coming and it ain't just about, some paperwork?
Well, it is really smart of you to bring that up, because this is the sort of thing that usually does take weeks of discussion. You can't just say, oh my God, look, we've got a smoking gun and we think the bullet is at Mar-a-Lago, go, go, go. It doesn't happen that quickly. I mean, there's all sorts of levels of discussion, particularly given the historic nature of this, that I think certainly within the last couple of weeks, if not even longer, that the Attorney General was aware of what his investigators had found and what they were looking at. And there was probably some sort of debate initially about, is this something we can really do? For Merrick Garland to give the green light, he had to have known within the last couple of weeks at least, if not longer, what it is that the Department of Justice, the FBI had collected already that was beyond probable cause that Donald Trump committed a serious crime. And so I think it's perfectly smart to marry up what Merrick Garland and what his demeanor was a couple weeks ago with this action that happened yesterday.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.